I messed everything.
Yeah,
Oh, we're starting. Cool.
Okay, are we on? Hi, Dr. Joy, Christine,
I am Jake.
Alicia.
Jaden. Week 2.
Okay, so Assistant Person A, I'll go first. Mine was talking about the categories of different picture books in the Chapter 7. And I'm supposed to give a brief description of each and what the criteria for selecting them was. I was I had one question for the entire thing, which was basically, it didn't give a lot of explanation as to the criteria of why these genres are selected. Like, it describes them, but it doesn't tell me why they're important to learning. So I had a little bit of difficulty, honestly, describing the criteria for them, because they just didn't talk about them in terms of relation to children's learning. Yeah. So, I mean, I can go through a couple. I mean, there's a lot of them, so, I mean, listing them one by one, we all kind of see it's right in front of us. But they have stuff like ABC books where you are doing the ABCs and each word is related to each letter with pictures and stuff like that. Why are these important? I mean, we kind of understand why they're important, but I'm reading an educational article and I really want to delve into it and see what educational authors and psychologists have to say about it as to why it's important. That's what really interests me, and I just wish there was a little bit more of that in the article itself. It's a good description, but...
Like, I don't know, just thinking off the top of my head for ABC books, I feel like it's not like just the letter, and it's not just the, apple or the bear or whatever, but I feel like it's giving the kids something to link to that letter so they remember what makes, or what, I guess, associates that.
Mm-hmm.
And for kids just having just the letter or, just the word mathematics or something, it's not enough to keep them interested, so they need something else to link it. Well, a picture, a drawing.
Sometimes they have a whole story that links them together too, which is pretty cool, and that's a good way to... that's a good way to link all the letters together in a recognizable format.
I found it really interesting when they started talking about how, like, the Q is for bird, like Q is for quail, but they don't have the word for bird, so the kid automatically thinks, oh, this symbol actually, I'm not even on video, this symbol represents a bird or a B sound instead of a Q sound. So I found that really fascinating and started really thinking through, okay, what message are we sending kids?
Did that create any misconceptions?
I think a lot. Yeah. I'm thinking with our ELL learners, if they don't have the vocabulary for that, especially the littles or kids that are coming in with a different alphabet than the Roman alphabet, I think it could cause some serious confusion.
Yeah.
So I think in the article it said that you shouldn't use them for that reason, just because of that reason.
Yeah.
They talk about some others like counting books, where they link numbers and letters together, like numbers and words and stuff like that. I am always on board for stuff like that. I think that's great. Merging things and linking things together, just like ABC books. So, and then also they always start at 0 too, which is pretty cool. And that having the concept of 0 is very important to understand. So, yeah.
And now I'm wondering how many counting books actually start with 0.
Yeah, me too. I thought of that as well when I read
what have I read to
that.
my kids and what have I read to my nephew, and how many of them actually start at 0. And that's a hard concept to grasp for a little kid.
It is, yeah.
It's a hard concept to grasp as an adult.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. And then they also have things like concept books, where they have a single concept that they present, which are like ideas, like friends, or like colors, shapes. And they talk about shapes too, like geometric shapes, which is pretty cool, like all the circles in life that we see, or all the squares in life that we see. Stuff like that, and that's pretty cool. I just, but what's the rationale behind that? I know there's some sort of rationale, but building children that understand the world around them more and in greater depth. But I want to know more of the rationale behind that.
I feel like for the, I guess, specifically geometric shapes, that makes me think of physics. So if kids recognize shapes when they're younger, and can see them in the world, and when they get to physics, they'll be like, oh, this makes this shape. And it's just giving them at least a basis before physics, because I feel like physics is kind of that outlier science that you don't really get to. It's all the other.
Yeah, it seems like you'd want to do that first, almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's everything.
It's everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of what that provides the basis for.
Yeah, I like it. I'll take it. And then they had participation books as well, which is, it can be anything, but it involves them doing a physical activity that expands beyond the book. So that was pretty cool. And I think that idea of TPR for pretty much anything is always great for learning. So I understand that rationale pretty much immediately. Do something physical along with what you're learning, you're going to remember it.
Yeah.
So
I feel like that's also good for students who just have trouble staying engaged.
yeah.
It gives them
That's how I
another,
was.
I know incentive's not the right word, but I guess it's reason to be included in the class.
Mm-hmm. And then, kind of building off that, they have wordless picture books as well, which are really cool.
Those are some of my absolute favorite books.
Mm-hmm.
So Tuesday, I can't remember the author's name, and I know it was in the article, but it has the frogs that come through and wreak havoc on this town, and then leave.
I've
and
seen
people,
that,
I
yeah.
love that book so much. I think it's brilliant.
I read that with kids, actually.
Yeah.
That's the same book. That was really cool.
I love having kids actually tell the story in their own words.
Yeah.
And then it makes for a really good writing prompt, actually.
Yeah.
So,
And it gives them ownership of the story, too, because it becomes their story,
exactly.
which is pretty cool in their words. It's great for ELLs.
Yeah.
Working with ELLs, and we were building wordless picture books, and that was really cool.
Yeah. And they can also tell it in their home language and then translate it into English. So.
And they have other stuff. They have like predictable books as well, which those are pretty obvious. The rationale behind them, they have repeating images, ideas, words, concepts, things like that. They're easily decodable, so you can predict what's how you can ask the child, what do you think is going to happen next, or based on the cover, what do you think is going to happen. Predicting is always great. Always great to know how to do
Is
that.
that just like, I read that, but I still is it just to get kids to, I guess, recognize things like with like bits and parts.
They're real young
Making
learner books.
connections, making like
Patterns,
Yeah.
and so like the Brown Bear books and everything by Eric Carle, basically.
Books that have repeating phrases a lot. So.
And where it's, you know what's going to happen next to get those kids actively engaged in what's going to come next.
Yeah.
So, with rhyming or...
And then they have some other stuff. They have, of course, there's the classic picture storybook with text and pictures. We all grown up with that. And that, I think, allows students to do a variety of things. Allows them to make predictions on that book by looking at the pictures and inferences. And they can explain their kind of how they feel about the book and what they took away from the book based on looking at these pictures and words together. So picture books are always going to be great. I'm trying to think of there's a couple others. They have engineered books, and those I thought were really interesting. Those are books that are like pop-up books and stuff like that. Books that make sounds with buttons, all sorts of stuff like that. Even books that you can like scratch and sniff and stuff like that. I like the idea of sensory feedback. I think that's always important to learning, especially with young kids, because little babies are always grabbing things and looking at them and eating them. So.
Don't ever bring the musical books in the front.
Drive you insane.
They will drive you insane.
What's really interesting to me is how smart little kids are, because a lot of times I learned this in last part, but little kids pick up grammar and I guess like body language and stuff even before they even know what things really mean.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, is really huge, and just how things are set up. And something else that I thought was interesting was how a lot of times parents, when your kids are really young or when you're a baby, parents talk to you in baby talk, but you never end up talking like that, which is, I think,
the whole point of the kid doing that anyways, they're trying to break out of that.
Yeah.
That's like the molting stage, trying to get out of that and actually say real words.
Exactly.
So
But
maybe
I have
they
heard
get
that
mad.
that's beneficial for them to hear baby talk.
I'm sure it's beneficial to hear anything, pretty much.
Probably.
I like that, yeah. I guess you'd be right, because it's like you're saying back to them what they're saying, and it's like you're almost
I
communicating
don't
with them.
remember.
Yeah. It's interesting.
I have my horrible parenting philosophy that I would never baby talk my children because I've seen it happen too much where like you have 7 or 8 year olds that still talk baby talk because their parents still talk at them like they're babies, and like your child can't talk because of this.
Yeah, I got this kid who's like 9 years old at my work, and you know talks like a little kid, like a little baby. And when I see his parents with him, hey, how you doing, buddy? It's like, and he kind of talks like that. It's like,
yeah,
you created that.
Exactly. You are responsible for this monster.
Yeah. And that was pretty much it for my jigsaw. Sorry, it's hard to talk right now. I'm like just tearing words out and throwing them.
Yeah, no,
I think we're all there.
It's too hot.
All right.
Okay. Here or there.
Either way.
There you go. Scroll somewhere.
Okay. So I explored the folklore aspect of books, and I found some really interesting things, like how the folklore is used throughout the world, and it's really similar in all stories. There are different versions of different stories, like Cinderella, which is actually one of the books I reviewed, was the Korean Cinderella. And they're all very similar with their theme because the theme is very basic, and so it can be moved from culture to culture. And then we also use folklore in everyday life with different sayings that we have. And so it's important to expose children, the students, to that because we use it all the time. And even the names of things, like we wrote with pencils that are named after Greek gods and things like that. So we see it every day. And so some things to consider when we're selecting folklore is that it's different from books that we usually read. There's not as much character development in the folklore books. And usually you don't see a change in the character's attitude or position on something. And so that's something you should prepare them for, is that that's not what they're going to see in the book. And then also, what they talked about was the benefits of reading the original version to the students, which I don't know where I stand on that, but they gave some good points or some good examples where they read like a less violent version to a child that the mom did, and it's the big bad wolf, and the wolf ended up being blown into the sky and never seen again instead of being killed. And then she was scared for weeks and having nightmares because she thought the wolf was going to come back. And then when they read her the original version where the wolf dies, the nightmares stopped and she wasn't scared anymore. That was one reason why you should read the original version. But it can also, I don't know if I haven't researched this enough to know the benefits of that.
I'm thinking some of those folklores and fairy tales don't get really graphic. And really, I mean, if you think about Cinderella and Snow White and what they originally come from, they're nasty and they're violent.
Yeah, and the argument for that was the whole TV and video games. Was what are they seeing when they're playing video games and when they're watching TV, and is reading these folklores as bad as that? And
they're always talking about
video games, and they also talked about how when they're reading the books, it's very straightforward and stated. Like in the Cinderella, when the stepsisters cut off their heel and their toe, that was it. It's like they cut off their heel and tried to fit the shoe, and there was nothing about blood gushing everywhere or anything like that. And so that was one of their arguments too, was that they see worse things in video games and TV every day. And so my last section was that folktales can be divided into 7 sections. And the first is cumulative tales, where the story keeps growing and problems or people are added on, like the old lady who swallowed the fly, and then it keeps growing and going. The second was why tales, which tells them why something is why.
by the way.
Yeah, why something is the way
why,
it is.
like, why is there like a man in it? Or, like,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's Beast Tales, where the animals take on human characteristics of the 3 little pigs. And there are Trickster Tales, where there's one character who outsmarts all the other characters. And then there are Noodlehead or Numbskull Tales, where it's just about an unintelligent main character who makes mistakes throughout the book, and it's just funny kind of thing.
I thought of Amelia Fidelia when I read
That's
that.
a
I'm
good one.
yeah, like
Those are
modern
good
day
ones.
doodle.
I
Yeah,
like those.
so actually, literal.
Yeah.
Trust the chicken.
I love the literal. Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
the literal interpretation of the world.
Yeah. And then the 6th type is realistic tales, and those are focused on real historical events or people, but the stories that they tell don't actually necessarily happen. And then the last is fairy tales, where it's a really wondrous world of magic, and that seems to be a favorite among children, fairy tales. That's the end of my section.
So were we supposed to talk about the Marisol McDonald, like,
Yeah, I don't know.
or like
Probably, yeah.
we probably could?
Because you guys did Marisol and we did Persepolis, so yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about those?
Okay.
Marisol was the picture book.
I did Marisol, Persepolis, and then the Folk Day.
Yeah.
Oh.
We all had to do.
I'm so confused.
Yeah, I think we all.
That
It was like the
Or-
beginning part. It was
There was 3 and then or Persepolis.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I did a folklore and Persepolis.
Cool.
So,
Alright.
okay.
So Marisol McDonald was about a girl who was pretty much different from everyone, and she wore mismatched clothing, and her hair was red, and she had, what was it, tortillas with peanut butter and jelly instead of like bread with bread, and she just was really different, and everyone said, you don't match, you're not the same, your hair's not like mine, and so everyone was kind of, telling her she didn't fit in, and why aren't you normal, why aren't you like everyone else, and so she came to school normal, and she didn't like it, and felt like everything was weird, and her teacher was like, wrote her a note, and was like, you're so unique, and, you shouldn't let other people tell you, not to be who you are, and
Stargirl?
yeah, and so it was just really interesting on how, it was thinking about the whole mirror thing too, but like you mirror yourself kind of how others see you, and so she had the whole, everyone was like, oh, I'm not normal, but it's just who she was, and she embraced it, and it was very cute.
I liked it. I liked the story.
Yeah.
I had 2 reactions to it. There's the nice guy in me that liked the story and loved the ending, and there's the not so nice person inside me that read it and was like, a lot of people in this country are of like 2 or 3 different cultures, and life is kind of ambiguous for them, and it's hard, and they're constantly having questions. Part of me wanted a more ambiguous ending that didn't wrap up everything so nicely, with some questions left. But at the same time, like, that's what adult books are for. I understand that, but it just seemed, it ended very nicely, and I liked that. But there's another half of me that wanted a more ambiguous ending with more questions, because that seems to be the way that a lot of people with like 2 or 3 different cultures are living their lives. They have this sort of crisis where they don't know which one to choose. So I'm being all depressing now.
And not everyone chooses I'm going to be my unique self.
Everything's great, and I'm me.
Yeah.
There are some people who are like,
I'm going to fit in with me.
they're grown
that's it.
people, and they're
Exactly.
still trying to figure that out, And
Yeah.
so that's an interesting avenue to explore, I think, as well. I like both. I like both ideas. That was my gut reaction to it.
Yeah.
Read Stargirl.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd like the ending.
Cool.
Not to spoil the ending, but I think it fits in really nicely with that idea of this kid coming in, and I teach it in my characterization unit. It's actually a really fun book. But this kid comes in that doesn't fit in, that doesn't belong, and it's really a book about the bully and the bystander and this kid that just
Right.
does not fit in, and everyone starts making fun of her, and so she decides that she'll come and be normal and change her name and not be Stargirl anymore, and kind of the fallout of all that.
Right.
And the ending will make you want to throw the book across the room.
Oh,
But you might like it based on your
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll check it out.
I recommend it highly.
Awesome.
So, and it's really great for bullying too.
Okay.
Bonus. Bonus. We get to talk about bullying of bystanders. So, classroom management. Let's all get along. Exactly. School management. Yeah.
Oh, so I chose I think, I'm not sure if we were supposed to choose another one, but I chose a folk, I guess it's folklore, or it was like a multicultural book, and it was about how this plane was in this drought, and it was a rhyming book. And so it was pretty much how, I don't even know where this is supposed to be, which kind of made it hard for me to think of, like, what is this, targeted towards. And so then I was reading more on the author, and the author is this Caucasian woman who, it says she just got fascinated with African and Mexican culture. And so I was like, is she qualified to write this book?
Mm-hmm.
And in my post I said she wasn't, because, she just became fascinated with it, and then just decided to write. The books she's written I think are really cool, and they're fun, but it's like, at the same time, it's just, okay, there's this person, and, there's this African-American person in a plane, waiting for the sun to fall, or the rain to fall in a drought, and it's like, okay, where are they? And it's kind of, like, not real, because he shoots up an arrow, and they make, pops the clouds, and it starts raining. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just starts raining, and so everything's nice and green, and, everything's fixed, but it's just like, okay, someplace, where is this?
Mm-hmm.
What ethnicity is this person? Like, it's just kind of, I don't know.
an arrow on a plane.
Yeah. No, not a plane, like a desert plane, like a desert plane.
Sorry. The entire time my picture is on an airplane.
Oh, no.
Don't compromise the cabin pressure.
I'll go down.
So I just was like, okay. And so that was just kind of interesting to me, on how she just kind of makes up these random stories with African Americans and Mexican, people, and it's just like, it's an interesting book, but what is this targeted towards?
Yeah.
Like, is it, to tell children to shoot bow and arrows up at the sky to make it rain when there's a drought? Like,
Is there any, historical context, or is there any explanation? Is this a...
No, it's just like, it was a drought, and the cows are moving, and the grass is green, or not green, and everyone's hot, and this guy in Africa is sitting there, and he's the protector of the domain and makes it rain. And it's just like, okay, and everything's happy. It's just really, what's the context to this?
Why did that story need to be told?
There you go.
Exactly.
And who published it?
Yeah.
More importantly.
Yeah.
Boy, I need to write down my criteria, because I didn't know we were supposed to write down our criteria. I applied the criteria to the stories and was like, but I didn't write it
these
down.
ones.
Yeah.
I just did it, to those ones.
I didn't know that we had to do that.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't. I wasn't sure. I did it, but I was
Yeah.
on the fence. So I just did it.
you know what, Joy? If I have to do it, I promise I have it, and I have done it, and I will put it on there if you require it, gladly, without question. So just let me know.
Ditto.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not the only one. But I did apply it to all three stories, and it was really interesting to kind of run them through that little filter and
Yeah.
kind of check them out. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. They all seem to pass. Although, my folktale, I didn't really have an author, because it was an old folktale, and it was but other than that, it seemed to pass. I couldn't find the author. Folktale's 1,000 years old, so. It's like a Chinese folktale, so it's
That's cool.
they're all really old.
I was on the fence about tonight.
Yeah.
Because she wrote, it's a Cinderella story based in Korea, and it follows kind of the same storyline, but it's definitely changed. I looked up the author, and I couldn't find anything about her being interested in Korea or going to Korea. but she did rewrite or retell a lot of folktales in different cultures. She won a lot of awards, so I wasn't sure if that would count for anything.
Winning awards is always nice. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
she
like
won a lot of
folktales,
awards
right?
for her books that she wrote.
Were they multicultural?
Yeah, they're all like
yeah.
Korean Cinderella, Egyptian Cinderella, but I don't know. I
So,
don't
who
know.
are the awards, like, so who's sitting on the awards panels?
I would have to look it up again.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I said no
Just like,
because she has no
If
cultural
it's,
background, and she's written a lot of books, so
because
she couldn't have.
Cinderella in space.
frankly, if the awards panel is, like most awards panel, it's a bunch of white librarians.
Yeah.
But it happens, like, it's like, who qualifies them to make that call?
Exactly.
So, well, like, there's some people, though, too, that are like, I got invited to,
Mm-hmm.
because I know people, like, the teacher here and teacher at my high school who got, like, asked to, you know, be on the panel to,
To do the Cul-de-Cat or the New
Yeah.
Barrier. Yeah.
and so that's just really interesting, like, how do you get picked for that, and what qualifies you to judge other people's work, or, you know.
I know two people that have sat on the panels, and they're both really, really knowledgeable in
People,
children's
yeah.
literature.
Mm.
However, they're both white women.
Yeah.
Like, does that qualify them as multicultural gurus, or does that just qualify them as educated women?
Yeah.
So, and is that why most of the winners are white authors?
Yeah.
Yeah, white males.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
There's something to look at.
Let's look at the panel someday.
My jigsaw was really short. It was just brief history of comics and graphic novels, and so it pretty much just said that it was, I guess, first, I guess they called, like, hieroglyphics and some Greek pottery, like, some forms of comics,
Would absolutely
kind of.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they told stories and pictures and symbols. Yeah, I can see that. So, but then they said, like, the first, I guess, real, like, you know, modern day comics was in Europe, and so it kind of went all around different countries in Europe, and then finally came to the United States, and then went to Japan. And,
Usually with political cartoons and things
Yeah.
like that.
yeah.
Just making fun of people, basically, and telling popular stories.
And that's pretty much it. It just kind of was like, you know, 18 this, 19 that, and then, you know, went into Marvel and Stan Lee and stuff, and then into, like, Japan and stuff, and how theirs became, like, they were, like, you know, small comic strips, and then became magazines, and then how graphic novels was, like, really late, like, 90s and then early 2000s is kind of when it's, like, peaked up and became popular, and that was pretty much it. It was short.
Those Japanese mangas were so long, man.
Yeah.
It's like volume 20 of 9.
not like one.
That was like 500 pages.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, dang.
All
How
right.
do you do that?
Yeah.
I always think about that with, like, schools, like, weekly newspapers and stuff, too. How do people, like, really get the time to sit there, you know, write a new thing, or the newspaper that's out every single day? Like,
Yeah.
people are sitting there, like, prep an article, like,
Yeah,
this
my mom
happened
did
today.
it for 30 years.
Wow.
Journalist. An editor. And it was not easy for sure.
Yeah. Okay, we gotta get the newspaper out for people who
And now it's even, I think it's even faster with the internet news. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it's always
it's
out
like
there.
it's constantly changing and constantly moving, and they're just writing. Yeah. You don't get a moment.
But yeah, so that's pretty much it. And one more thing. I guess my gut reaction to chapter 9 was the whole Cinderella stuff and the architect thing. And it's like, when you're a kid, you don't really think about that. You're like, that person's good. I like them.
Yeah.
This person's bad. I don't like them. And I was like, oh, how does Cinderella feel about becoming wealthy after being poor? I was like, wow, that's an interesting question.
Is it okay for children to have clear-cut characters in some stories?
I've
Does
read
it facilitate the development of the story so they just get it and they don't have to spend all this time, like, puzzling about the nature of good and evil in the world?
Yeah, well, what I read in my article was that that's something that develops with time.
Yeah.
The gray areas, but when they're young, they see black and white.
Yeah.
So,
It's like no matter what, they're going to see black and white
yeah,
when they're really
like,
young.
if you
Yeah.
read them stories with gray areas, they're going to get confused.
It's like, what if a character's good, but they think they're bad based on how they look, and then that's just what they say. You know? And then that just screws up the entire story.
The little kids don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Are they good or are they bad?
They don't think about that. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, their actions are bad, therefore they're a bad person. They did something wrong.
Fairness
they're
is
bad.
so important.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. They cut in line.
You said a swear word.
He said the Q word. What's that, dear? Did you tell? I can't repeat it. Keep it between ourselves. I'll go talk to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I had. You know, all my stuff we had, other stuff we had.
I really found it interesting that the characterization or the lack thereof in most fantasies about like the blonde is always good and the dark-haired person is always bad and the young person is always good and the old person is always bad, and that's always really fascinated
Like
me.
Disney.
Exactly, Disney is the worst.
Women in Disney are the worst people in the world.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Almost every Disney person either doesn't have a stable
They don't have
household.
exactly. There's no parents in Disney movies.
They either have one or I don't think anyone has both parents.
Yeah. That is pretty much
Lion
true.
King. Oh no, they die. No.
Yeah,
What about Little Mermaid? Isn't she have
No, the mom. There's no
Oh,
mom.
Mermaid, the mom's dead.
Yeah. Where'd her mom go? Yeah, they never really addressed the mom in the Little Mermaid.
No,
They have like
everyone-
1,000 children in
I
the Little
decided
Mermaid.
that argument.
Yeah.
But that just makes you think, remember last time we were talking about how, books, well, okay, those are movies, but, books didn't have, the bad things like divorce, death, but
Mhm.
all those movies don't have
A solid parental structure.
I mean, a lot of those movies are, late 90s, 1980s.
But even, Cinderella, Snow White, even the early ones, those are like 70s, 60s, aren't they?
Where's Andy's dad in Toy Story?
They're divorced.
Okay, there you
Yeah.
go. Boom.
There's little tiny clues throughout the movie, actually, that they're going through a divorce right then.
Perfect.
Fascinating.
Wow.
That's a good movie.
Yeah.
So.
Tim Allen.
I'm trying to think of a single, single. Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, back to.
Okay, back to this. Apparently.
Even in Lord of the Rings, Frodo's parents are dead. Just saying. He goes to live with Bilbo Baggins.
No,
There you go.
literally every. There you go.
Sorry, I'm a nerd.
That's okay. Harry Potter.
Harry's parents are dead.
Twilight. No, that's not novel.
This was a divorce though. Alright.
Yeah, they're all divorced. Everyone in books are
Everyone's
apparently divorced.
divorced and dead.
Yeah, divorced, dead, or otherwise missing. So yeah, that whole idea of black and white and good and bad has always been really fascinating to me. And the old and young and the pretty and ugly, and it's that stigma that I'm wondering how kids really react to that. So
Do they build associations over time?
exactly.
Does that
And
perpetuate the stigma when they grow older?
yeah, and how do we as educators, as parents, as people help kids really understand that that's a stereotype? And,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting question.
So, another thing that really, I'm going to kind of go backwards on this, is when I was going over my gut reaction in the spring, Marshall Riddle Bully had me teach a class in here just quickly and had me go do a couple book talks. And we looked at the I Can Read books, and all the I Can Read books are either white or animals. And that brought me back to, I think it was the Encounter video where they didn't have a name or they didn't have an understanding, and so they talked about how this person is obviously an animal. Do they have tails? Because I don't identify with them. And it really made me think about, okay, what are we telling our kids when all the early readers we have are white or animals?
Wow,
What kind of message is that sending our children? And
that's interesting.
why are they only catering to a certain demographic?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got a whole list of them over there, and we went through tons of them. I'm like, there's got to be some sort of any kind of diversity. Nope.
Wow.
White animals.
When were those books made?
Now,
Wow, that's bad.
yeah, they're coming in hot off the press. And yeah, that really, I don't know, that hit me pretty hard this
Yeah.
spring, and then it's hitting me even harder now. Reading through these things, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is that saying? What message are we sending our kiddos?
Yeah.
So, I had in my jigsaw, sorry, we've got music. ADD moment.
Yeah.
So the current trends of graphic novels and what makes them different from other books, and how does the author describe the way that text can be read. And graphic novels started as kind of this gender-driven, boy-only market. That it's superheroes, it's bad guys, and now it's this complex, diverse set of books for
It can be like
young and
anything.
old. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's romance, there's historical fiction, there's I pulled out one of the books off the shelf just because I remember her coming here. Jennifer Holm. So Jennifer Holm wrote a series just for girls called Baby Mouse. And she's like, it's pink, it's cute. And I'm like, well, that's a stereotype in itself. But she said she didn't see enough graphic novels for females. And so she made Baby
Fair
Mouse
enough.
just for females.
You know, we have been making graphic novels almost exclusively for men for like 60 years.
Exactly.
You
So
know, they can get away with that.
she stereotyped Baby Mouse. So she wanted
Totally acceptable.
girls, and then she wanted science. So
Yeah.
she made an amoeba
That's cool.
that I thought was really cool. So she's got some really, really, really fun books. I learned a lot about graphic novels, though. I think before we did this, I confessed I hate graphic novels. I'm sorry. I hate them. I don't like reading them. To me, there's too much going on. They're all over the place. I just want, if I'm reading, I want words on a page, and that's where it ends. And so for me, it's really, really hard for me to track a graphic novel and actually read through it. My students are really big fans, so I try, but I don't use them in my classroom because I want to teach things that I actually care about.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that my dislike of it will actually pass on to my children. So I let them read it on their own, but for teaching it, I can't because I don't particularly enjoy them.
I have difficulty reading them myself, honestly, and getting into the cadence of it.
Yeah.
For sure. I've only read a couple because those are the only couple I've just been like, just made myself read and I got interested in them over time. So.
Yeah, I've tried to quite a few times to read them because my students read them. I have this young authors club that's really big into manga, and they're telling me all about it and telling me about these. There's these romances and there's all sorts of stuff going on. I'm like, there is some graphic stuff going on in some of these. And they're telling me about this, and I tried to read it, and I can't get into it. I've tried. But I'm glad that they're bringing in female protagonists. They're kind of unstereotyping the Wonder Woman of the world, maybe putting some clothes on girls.
Scott Pilgrim was a really good one that had both good male and female characters.
Oh, nice.
That had clothes on.
That's good.
So,
Yes.
very awesome. Yeah.
The clothes are important on females and males. So, and I also think that that the target is really changing. I think like the adults are still reading those Marvel comics, and they're all movies now. My son was just saying he wants to go to one, and I'm like, you can go to that with your dad, and I'm going to stay home. But yeah, I don't know. It's just not my thing. I remember my sister reading Archie comics growing up. Like, I'll never forget that. And she'd always want to. And I'm like, no thanks, bring on something else. You know, it just wasn't really my thing, and she loved them, and I couldn't stand them. So that tells you, and even in the same household. Yeah. There's the idea that some people have that if you're reading graphic novels or comic books, you're not going to be able to move on and read real novels, and I really see it as a really good support for our striving readers that are really that they have those text connections and they can really use their context clues to figure out what's going on in the story, and they don't need to rely on every single word to tell the story. So I think there's definitely a place for them. I also think that, and I think our graphic novels going up for school, or one of the articles talked about how a kid came into the library and was reading a historical novel, and then they started digging into the historical context and ended up with research books. And I feel like I've done that so much, especially in my Young Authors Club, is they'll be reading about something and they'll come ask me about it, and all of a sudden we are knee-deep in research.
Yeah.
And not even meaning to be knee-deep in research, but we're knee-deep in research doing this just because it sparks an interest in a kid. So
That's pretty cool.
it's really cool that brings that out of them. And they do. I have kids come to the library and backpacks full of these books. And they love them, which is fantastic. And these are some of my highest achievers. So and they read everything, but they really devour, especially the manga. They tend to devour that.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
yeah. So that was my Jigsaw. One of the books I brought them. I'm a visual learner.
Okay.
So I brought in a book called Wolf Wolf. It's the idea of The Boy That Cried Wolf, but it is set in kind of this China. It's by John Rocco, and it's this idea of this old wolf that wants to grow a garden, and this bratty little kid that is trying to kind of just like wreak havoc on his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so the pictures are absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it looks really.
I don't know if you can see that. The pictures are beautiful. There's the cherry blossom. Sorry, Japan. Oh my gosh.
Does it smell good?
Another continent.
No, you said.
Yeah, I said China.
Oh.
No, oops. So this is the kid, and the kid's herding goats, and keeps crying wolf, saying the wolf is trying to come get the kid and the goats, and the villagers come, and there is no, the kid's like, no, there is no wolf. So the same story of, sorry, I'm not showing you any of this, of the kid crying wolf, and here's the wolf he's old, he's
not that threatening.
He's not that threatening. He's, soaking his feet because they're tired. He couldn't stand for very long. Here's the kid sleeping on the job. And then he calls again. The wolf decides that he's going to play a trick of his own. Wolf took a nap, dreaming of Mushu and Double Goat Dumpling. Wolf can't get the goat. Boy calls wolf. No one comes. Said the wolf says, "Quit yelling. Those villagers aren't going to believe you." Says the old wolf knew his legs were too tired to chase down goats. He carefully loaded himself to a nearby rock and gazed up at the boy, his lips curled in a smile. They're not going to believe you until you're missing a goat. So let me take one.
Mm-hmm.
And so he tells the kid to actually come and tie the wolf to the fence post so the kid will be believed. And it's awesome.
Uh-huh.
So the goat comes in, the wolf walks out to the goat, and the wolf looks at the goat in the garden eating all his weeds, and he's like, oh wow, this is actually better than eating a goat.
Yeah.
This goat is going to tend to my garden now. And so it ends with what's one breakfast compared to delicious vegetables for the rest of my days, and the goat and the wolf become friends.
That's pretty cool.
So it's this idea of, the Boy That Cried Wolf told in I don't know, just a different culture.
Yeah, that's really cool.
What do you think the importance of telling against a different person in a different culture is?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I think just making connections with kids is really important. I think showing different cultural ideals is important, but the similarities and differences, I think it would be really cool to look at the story from a bunch of different cultures, kind of like your author did with the Cinderella, and looking at the same story through a different lens and through different cultures would be fascinating for kids to see. There are similarities and differences everywhere. So
okay, this is me picking a little deeper. So remember how we were saying using a math problem, just changing the person's name is not being multicultural. So what if I just changed the setting a little and made it in Australia and the wolf was a kangaroo? Do you think it would have significance? Would it just be changing things just to fit the theme?
That's a good question. I think you have a really good point. That maybe it isn't that big. Is that so? There's a question: is this multicultural then?
I think it does contain some elements of Buddhism, the reverence for every living thing.
Exactly.
How it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Because in the normal story, the kid just gets eaten.
Yeah.
So then that kind of gets me at, who are these books for? Are they for kids who aren't going to get that out of a book, or I mean, because it is said in our reading that children's literature doesn't necessarily need to be for kids; it can be for adults too.
Mhm.
So at the same time, are we gonna pick up this book, I guess, and not read it for our own personal gain? But
I think it's a less violent version of a good children's tale that could be dissected further if needed.
if needed,
Yeah.
Or it could just be left as is a good story.
Exactly. Like, I remember seeing this in the Laura Ingalls Wilder books, did one of these, but it was a kid, they got attacked by bees. And was out in the field working and got attacked by bees. So, okay, it's telling the same story. It's this general theme of stopping a brat,
Yeah, totally.
but introducing it with cultural, like,
What's nice is the kid gets to learn a lesson without having to get killed.
without dying. Yeah.
So he lives with his lesson and becomes a better
Mhm.
person from it, which is good.
And this is, kind of has the trickster element of the wolf saying, hey, bring the goat down.
Yeah, totally.
This is how you're going to save face, and this is how I'm going to get what I want.
Yeah.
And doesn't have to do any work because he's old, and it has this element of respecting your elders, I guess, because the kid respects the old wolf.
Mhm.
So, like, would you say, like, I guess, for us as teachers, I guess, reading this book and picking it up would be, I guess, a good way for us to figure out how we use books in the classroom. So, we were saying, okay, we could use it as multicultural, or we could use it as a trickster tale, because there's, like, different units, and so I guess picking up these children's books would be good for us figuring out when we want to use it and how we use it, because there's different themes and messages that we want to teach.
Yeah, I think you could plug it in a lot of different places.
Share the story with the original.
Exactly. Yeah, you could look at it through characterization. You should look at it
It's
through
better and why.
exactly change of character traits. The wolf wanting to eat the goat and then coming around and saying, "No, we're actually just going to be friends."
Mhm.
Also, the stereotype of the old person being evil and mean. This one breaks that stereotype of this goat being this kind of pacifist and saying, "I'm not going to harm you.
Yeah.
Here's what we're going to do to solve this problem." So, it's interesting. It has a lot of elements to it. They're just
Cool.
that I like. Let me get back to my notes. My computer shut down on me. Sorry.
You're good. You're doing good in this conversation.
Mhm.
I thought this was good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Indeed.
I don't know if we didn't really cover Persepolis much.
Oh,
Yeah.
You guys
Yeah.
read that. One of you guys.
Yeah.
So this is my gut reaction to Persepolis. Is that what this is or something?
Mhm.
Okay. I'm biased because I'm a historical person and I like history, and just from that alone, it was interesting to read Persepolis and have a corner of history be examined a little closer for me, because I didn't really know about what was happening in that country and how it used to be more democratic and more free and more open. So it was really interesting to see how that was just closed off. And it's really interesting to see how open it was beforehand. I had no idea it was that open anymore. It was like Europe,
Yeah.
basically, which is pretty cool. So yeah, gosh, there's so much happening in that story. I liked it. I thought it was good. I thought it was pretty heavy and pretty dark, and lots of torture and death and killing and humiliation of people and degradation. So I think it would be great for like late middle school or high school. Late middle school at the very earliest, but definitely like a high school class would really get into that, I think. Really get into it, because you need to be able to really think about those abstract concepts to fully appreciate the book and explore it. And you would have to have some greater life experience in human suffering and change to really appreciate what the characters in that book go through. So,
And
that's
I
kind of my
couldn't.
impression of it.
I said it before we turned the video on, but this was one of the first books I pulled off my shelf as a teacher, because of the torture and because of the just the graphic nature of this graphic novel, I think it is too much. I personally, like I said, I'm not a graphic novel fan to begin. Novel person, phonetic, fanatic, not phonetic, yeah. I'm not a fan of graphic novels to begin with in this particular one. I think I would have done better without the pictures. I think it would have been easier for me to digest without seeing it and reading about it. I think it's just too much. There's a point where I tend to stay away from violence to begin with as a person. I don't like it. I don't like to see it. I don't find it entertaining. I don't watch it on TV. I don't play video games I don't play video games, but that's not entertainment to me. And I love history. I'm a history teacher. I love history. However, I like primary documents, but I don't like seeing visually some of the stuff that went on. It's too much for me to handle. And so I feel like this book particularly was just too much. And even though they are just graphic pictures, it still was too graphic for me. And I came at it from a different standpoint, but because I did understand the history of Iran, and I understood the change, and I understood the kind of tyrannical, fanatical government that came in and took over and took this free country and said, okay, this is the new religion and this is what's going on, and we're going to go ahead and oppress these people now. And so I knew about that going into this book. I picked up and put down this book multiple times. When I pulled it off my shelf originally, it was because a student came to me to show me the picture of, because I put a lot of books on my shelf without reading, which is probably not a great idea, but oh well. I don't have time to read hundreds of books. And so this student came to me and showed me the picture of someone getting urinated on, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to take that off the shelf. And oops, please don't tell your parents. But I tried to read it, and I put it down, and I tried to read it, and put it down, and for this class, I'm like, okay, I have to read it. And I still wanted to throw it across the room, because it just isn't, that isn't entertainment to me, and I read for entertainment more than anything else. And I don't find violence, and I don't find torture entertaining in any way, shape, or form. So I think it's good to know about those things. I think there are better ways to show them than to physically show them. So that's my take on it.
One thing that I did like was that you didn't have to know anything about the history of Iran to read it.
That's
you
true.
just start reading it and they just pretty much tell you everything.
Yeah.
In a very succinct way.
Yeah.
Yet, its understanding could be complemented by front-loading the more history of Iran, just in case you wanted to, or after you read it, you could look more at the history of Iran or something, So you could either add a bunch on or not add anything on at all, and it would still be, you would still understand it. It would still be comprehensible either way. So I like that. But man, I don't know if I'd even have that in my classroom.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. I wouldn't have it in anything less than 9th grade, personally, in my own opinion.
No. And you also, you'd have to know your audience of your 9th graders.
Yeah.
And I know some teachers actually teach it, and in the upper grades, and it is, I think, recommended on some lists in middle level, and it's too much. In my personal opinion, with 9 years of teaching experience, it's too much for a middle school classroom.
Yeah.
So, and I've taught at some pretty rough middle schools, and it's still too rough for a middle school for a 12-year-old, 13-year-old brain to see and comprehend. Even with video games, even with movies, even with everything going on TV.
It's the realism of it.
Real.
Yeah. It's the fact that it's
not
it's
fantasy.
graphic without, there's a hardness to seeing real blood and violence without guys are blood.
Yeah.
That the kids are used to seeing that, but to see what it's really like, they're like, damn, they don't really know how to deal with that.
Well, and the fact it went from a country that was pretty similar to ours.
Yeah.
As far as freedom is concerned, to what we see now.
Yeah.
And this is the change that was made. That's very real for a lot of kids.
Yeah.
To say, oh, that could happen to me.
And some kids have grown up in environments like that too.
Exactly.
Come to this country, so
Exactly.
it's always something to think about too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're good.
Do we have anything else we want to talk about?
I think we're good.
I think we covered it.
Yeah. Thank you. See
Thank
you next
you.
week.
See you next week.